6 Peculiar Things About Chuuya Nakahara, According to Dazai, by Blowing Your Mind. Chapter 1. There were very few things Dazai enjoyed in life. He did not find amusement in the typical human activities that kept most occupied, nor the atypical things. He did not stop to enjoy sceneries as others did, nor allowing himself to stop and gape at any pictures. That being said, he did try to find solace in the little things that make his time on Earth slightly better. He enjoyed canned crabs, getting drinks with Odazaku and Ango, teasing Chuuya, calling Chuuya his dog, and looking at Chuuya. Strange that Chuuya had been the one to take up 3 of the 5 categories. Though that didn't mean anything, he had reassured himself. He just knew how to spend his free time. Though perhaps maybe he was more human than he had originally thought. Perhaps he had the potential to be one of those humans that stopped to snap pictures at moments because, lately... Well, Dazai would start from the very beginning, at age 15. When he had found out that Chuuya Nakahara, a reluctant port mafia member, his very reluctant partner, had freckles. It was not a lot to notice. Only on the times when Dazai had gotten up in close proximity to tease him about his height or some other unethical topic. Chuuya had just beaten up a smuggler without Dazai, much to his satisfaction. The redhead stood from over the body and crossed his arms, stepping away from the unconscious pile of men. Winter had just ended, welcoming the spring air, though Dazai was not a fan of the hot weather. The heat seeped beneath his bandages and threatened heat stroke, though Dazai was always too cold for that anyway. "There, are you fucking happy now?" Chuuya asked, wiping his hands off as if he had actually bloodied them. Dazai looked down at the men, then back to Chuuya. "Yes, very. As expected of my dog to follow my orders." Chuuya's face twisted with rage as he took a step closer to Dazai, and, much to Dazai's delight, looked straight up at him as he jabbed a finger in his chest. "I am not your damn dog. I'm not anyone's damn dog." "You are correct," Dazai stated calmly. "You are more like a puppy with your unimpressive height." Chuuya reached up to try and strangle Dazai, though that was when Dazai noticed something oddly peculiar. Chuuya had been up close to his face, practically nose to nose as he tried to somehow kill Dazai, though he was no longer focused on the hands grabbing at his neck. There were dots that lined the bridge of Chuuya's nose, then splattered high on his cheeks. They were not too noticeable. In fact, one would easily miss them if they were not hyper-focused on Chuuya, as Dazai currently was. "Oi, idiot!" Chuuya shouted, snapping in Dazai's face. "Are you even listening?" Instead of responding normally, Dazai grabbed Chuuya by the wrist and held him closer so he wouldn't pull away. "Hey!" Chuuya snarled, though the threat quickly left his face when Dazai poked a finger to his cheekbone, gentler than most times. Chuuya shut his mouth. "What are you doing?" "Shush now." Dazai eyed the abominations on Chuuya's face. What a strange sight, though logically it made sense given Chuuya's hair color. Had he always had these? Or perhaps they were more dominant during the summer. "Did Chuuya know he has freckles?" Dazai finally asked. Chuuya's eyes narrowed as he pushed away from Dazai. "What the hell? Why would that matter?" Dazai raised an eyebrow. "Chuuya didn't know he had freckles? My, they're right there, on his cheekbones." Chuuya glared and crossed his arms, signaling his uneasiness of the conversation. "I don't spend a lot of time looking in the mirror, idiot." Rather defensive, was he? How odd that Chuuya didn't realize such a detail about himself, though he supposed it made sense. Dazai knew that Chuuya tended to avoid reflections, whether it was about his inner turmoil or otherwise. Is Chuuya embarrassed about the fact he has freckles? Somewhere below them, a man groaned and shifted. Chuuya promptly kicked him in the head roughly, knocking him back out. "No," he growled. "You're just being weird as hell." Before Dazai could continue taunting him, Chuuya pushed past him in a final way to the nearby parking garage where his motorcycle was located. It looked like Dazai would have to walk home. And ever since that incident, He had wanted to get a closer look, to touch them and trace them. He had marked it off as some normal urges, although Odasaku would tell him otherwise with a knowing look on his face. But nevertheless, Dazai got his chance not too long after, perhaps a month later. And now that the presence of them had been noticed, Dazai could not help but let his eyes trail across the bridge of speckled dots across Chuuya's nose. He didn't know why the sight was so simply alluring, so perhaps he had gotten a concussion from Chuuya shaking him around. Yes, that was the only possible explanation. It also had to be the reason why his chest felt so tight and constricting, and his guts weighed him down. "How is he doing?" Odasaku asked, as he and Dazai walked down the white-tiled hallway side by side. Dazai shrugged. "From what I understand, for once, not much." Odasaku hummed, but did not give any further comment. Despite his earlier words, Dazai knew very well what had happened, though it was all a matter of admittance. A mission had gone wrong, as they tended to do. Though after that, a backup plan had gone awry. Then after that, another. Chuuya did not get injured much, but when desperate measures were called for, a coma. That was what Chuuya had been reduced to. They arrived at the door, both stopping at the nameplate that had been slotted in there since Chuuya was expected by the mafia medics to be there for a long while. Odasaku eyed the door, then Dazai. "Do you need some company?" Chuuya would not appreciate waking up to Odasaku's face, if he ever did wake up. And he would definitely not appreciate waking up to Dazai's. Despite that, Dazai waved his drinking buddy off. "No, I don't need any assistance." "I will leave you with him." Dazai's subordinate took a step back, then continued to walk further down the hallway. "You have my thanks, Odasaku," Dazai called lightly over his shoulder, though the man had already turned the corner. Oda had been the first person Dazai had thought to call, given the situation. He managed to lift Chuuya when Dazai couldn't due to his own injury. A simple one gauze could fix. There was no need for the medics to waste their resources on such a careless injury. Then take them both back to the Port Mafia's headquarters. The subordinates who had come with Dazai and Chuuya had never returned, bodies remaining littered across the ground. Dazai stepped into the room without another moment of hesitation. The room filled with the sounds of a heart monitor and Chuuya's slow breathing. The room filled with a coppery smell. The room, a bland white color with specks of red from Chuuya, and the room was all too foreboding for Dazai. Dazai closed and locked the door behind him. "Chuuya should be awake by now," he sighed, sitting at his partner's bedside. The chair was plastic and uncomfortable, though Dazai did not plan on staying for long. He had to report to the boss still, the worst part of any mission. Chuuya did not move from the bed. Dazai gave the metal pole a light shove, jostling the bed slightly. Though Chuuya's head only lolled to the side limply, the mask had been replaced with tubes that went through his nose to assist with breathing. And Dazai wondered if he would stubbornly wake up if he removed them. No patient had ever done it before, though Dazai would not put it past Chuuya to pull such a stunt. "I suppose you can sleep for now, dog. Just know that when you wake back up, you will be doing the brunt of the work for the month. Since I will be filling in for your jobs," Dazai ordered, because he had the gut feeling that deep in there, somewhere, Chuuya was raging at him. Dazai moved the bed back to where it once was and reached to tilt Chuuya's head back onto the pillow. In doing so, he noticed how pale Chuuya was now, as white as the very sheets he laid in. The hospital lighting was not flattering, though Dazai could now see, even more clearly, the freckles that dotted Chuuya's face. They were dull, not fiery red, and consuming his face as Dazai had seen with some other people. Subtle, but a detail Dazai didn't know he had missed when he first met Chuuya. His partner's breathing remained rhythmic, as did the ticking of the clock in the corner, and Dazai could not resist the pull. He reached out once again, sitting on the edge of the plastic chair as he lightly touched Chuuya's nose. When the redhead had not moved, nor his breath hitched, Dazai continued. ghosting his finger up the bridge of it, then falling to his cheek. He reached the freckles, connecting them together. It was a rather fun game, enough to occupy his time for a good half an hour. By the time he had realized what he'd been doing, both of his hands cupped Chuuya's cheeks. Instinctively, Dazai pulled back with a scrunched nose, a disgusted comment on the tip of his tongue as he wiped his hands off on his already dirtied slacks. He did not let the comment escape his mouth. There was no use if Chuuya wasn't listening. In his pocket, Dazai's phone buzzed as he slipped it out to see the message from his boss, ordering him to report. Dazai rose from the chair, legs numb from sitting in the same position so long. The chair creaked in an unreliable way, and Dazai would make a mental note to sit on the bed next to Chuuya on his next visit. He sighed. "I must face the boss alone. I hope you are happy, Chuuya, escaping your duties. Dogs are supposed to be more loyal than that." He analyzed Chuuya's face, and there was no fluttering of his eyelids or indication that he had even heard. Though Dazai knew he had. His body was just lying dormant, though Chuuya was too stubborn to stay this way forever. "I will handle things from here. Rest, Chuuya." In the corner of his eye, Dazai saw Chuuya's fingers twitch slightly. He knew it was a normal reflex of coma patients, though he knew after that Chuuya would be just fine. And in fact he was, bothering him a mere 2 weeks later, constantly yelling at Dazai for letting him sleep that long. Though neither of them had mentioned Dazai's tender touches, even if they both knew well what had transpired. They had been arguing an awful lot recently. Not that Dazai and Chuuya didn't butt heads before, though lately, Chuuya had seemed a lot more irritable. Dazai wondered idly what had been on Chuuya's mind recently. Of course, he could deduce that easily, but he had been prickly, defensive. Dazai could recall their last altercation. It had been a normal banter, a consistent thing between them. "I'm done with this shit," Chuuya growled, shouldering past Dazai to get to his room. "Sleep on the damn couch for all I care. I'm not giving you a ride back." Typical, losing your temper. Chuuya threw his arms up. "The dog comments have become too fucking much. Get something more creative than that and height jokes. It's getting old." Chuuya wishes I come up with more insults for him? Chuuya flushed red with anger. "No, damn it, just stop with them completely." "Well, I can think of 100 other things about Chuuya to insult." Dazai pulled a thoughtful face, putting his hand on his chin to ponder. "Such as his eyes. They are a hideous light." Wrong. "And his hair is like a stoplight. It doesn't blend into his surroundings, and it's a disturbing sight." Also wrong. "And those freckles. They're like mini abominations." Absolutely wrong. Dazai saw the moment Chuuya's eyes shifted from stormy to somewhat fractured. He crossed his arms, as he always did when involved in a distasteful conversation. Then he put on the angry front to hide the hurt. "Well, thanks for your damn input." His voice was low, so unlike the high-pitched yelling he had expected. That was when Dazai knew that somewhere along the line he had messed up. Chuuya turned on his heel and slammed the door to his bedroom, practically shaking the walls to his whole apartment. Dazai didn't understand because Chuuya had very clearly asked him to change insult topics, so he just hit where it hurt. Chuuya's looks, as he had discovered over the months of working with him. Dazai stared blankly at the shut door, hearing the angry shuffling behind it, and hummed in thought. Perhaps he should have commented more on Chuuya's attitude. Dazai slipped out of Chuuya's apartment complex and into the dreary rainy night. Nevertheless, it was one of their many fights. They would be up to their normal semi-functional selves next time a mission came up. Though that had been a very vast miscalculation on Dazai's part, because he and Chuuya did not see each other for a whole week. Despite the missions, Chuuya had opted out to stay with Koyu, per her request. Though when Dazai did see Chuuya again, he finally discovered just why Chuuya had felt so viciously attacked. Because Dazai could no longer see the freckles on Chuuya's face. They had both been called into the boss's office for recruitment of sorts, a job for the both of them. Skipping would be non-negotiable. And even with the dim lighting of the office, Dazai could very clearly see the absence of the usual specs on his face. Chuuya had resolutely looked away from him as the boss talked, jaw tight with defiance as Dazai bore holes into the side of his face. And when it had finally been called off, Chuuya attempted to storm off directly after bowing, though Dazai had grabbed him by the coat just as he reached past the doors. He faintly saw the smirk on Mori's face before the doors closed shut, then caught a glimpse of Chuuya's angered face before it was replaced with a fist, hard like a rock. Dazai was on the floor in a short amount of time. The two men who usually guard Mori's office had fled at the first sight of a fight between the two of them. Once Dazai's vision had returned, his back was on the rough carpet of the floor, and Chuuya was sitting atop him, reaching an arm back again. Dazai let him hit him, even flinging his face to the side and spitting out blood for good measure. While he detested pain, Chuuya needed to get his own emotions out. An uppercut to the chin, and Dazai could feel his teeth clacking together, slitting his tongue. A metallic taste enveloped his senses. If Dazai had not had his nullification, then he would certainly have been buried into a wall by now. And just when Dazai had expected another blow, Chuuya's arm remained hovering in the air as he panted, looking down to Dazai with hatred. Dazai had gotten that look many times before, though they were usually from his victims he had tortured or held at gunpoint. Dazai swallowed down the lump in his throat, a strange thing to do since he had never done such a thing before. How odd the things Chuuya could make him feel. "I apologize for my actions," he spoke, an empty aspect to his tone, then turned to the side and spit out a tooth. Chuuya remained in the position, looking down at him, and it was quite a sight. He huffed, then laughed, a hysterical note to it. Dazai watched as he dropped his arms and laughed some more. "Well, that was a damn sorry excuse for an apology." "Well, I thought it was quite heartwarming. Am I forgiven?" "No." Chuuya shook his head. "Not a chance in hell. I'm still pissed at you, but I'm gonna have to work with you for this mission anyway, so get up." Dazai pointedly looked from Chuuya's thighs straddling his midsection, then back up to Chuuya. "Well, I would if the hat rack would just get off of—" Chuuya noticed their position, and not being blinded with anger anymore, quickly rolled off to the side to stand up. He didn't offer a hand to Dazai as he turned his back to him and continued down the hallway. Dazai remained on the floor, eyes following his figure, and before Chuuya could escape to the elevator, he yelled, "Is Chuuya wearing makeup to conceal his freckles?" The redhead's whole body went rigid, and his pace fastened to get away from observing eyes. Ah, so that was the case then. Another week of radio silence proved that Chuuya could hold a good grudge, but that did not stop the mission from taking place. A rather serious out-of-the-country one, located in Italy. Of course, Dazai and Chuuya had been chosen for their appearances as children, attending a gala as one of the child guests. They could easily go without being questioned, while an adult, on the other hand, would have a harsh time bypassing the security. It was an easy and diplomatic meeting, meaning that Dazai had done most of the talking, while Chuuya watched his back for any suspicious hitman or assassins attempting to take their heads, in and out, with, for once, no issues involving an ambush or a trap, which led them to their last and only night in a hotel Mori had set them up in. It was, for once, rather extravagant, or at least according to Dazai, because he himself did not live in tasteful conditions. One bed, though it was large and very cushiony, a red velvet lounge chair at the foot of the bed, and just as plush carpet leading to a large dresser, and so on. Chuuya didn't seem fazed by the room or how dramatic the architecture was in Italy than in Yokohama, though he was admittedly drawn to the balcony, a stone one, large enough to throw a small house warming party. They arrived late into the night, where the sun had fallen and the moon had risen. Though Dazai was not exhausted, and he knew Chuuya was not by the way he was pacing, moving as much as possible. Dazai simply watched him from the bed, eyes lazily following Chuuya's path of destruction. "You will pace a hole in the hotel floor, slug." Chuuya whipped around to glare at Dazai, though didn't say anything. His lips were pulled into a thin line, and he simply turned to exit the room, and onto the balcony. Well, he certainly had a lot of repressed anger. Dazai unconsciously rubbed at his bruised face. He was not too fond of receiving another beating, so he simply waited an hour before dragging himself from the bed and shuffling out onto the balcony. Surprisingly enough, there was a large blanket spread out across the stone balcony, and Chuuya lay on his back, eyes half-lidded as he gazed up at the stars. "Star-gazing?" Dazai asked, a quirk to his lips as he slid the door shut behind him. Chuuya blinked, eyes sliding to Dazai before he once again returned them to the starry sky, and Dazai would admit, it was a nice view. So he went over to the other side of Chuuya and simply lay next to him, the two of them staying in a stiff silence for moments before Chuuya finally decided to speak. "I'm still damn mad at you." It was a murmur, almost lost in the breeze. "Yes, I'm aware." Dazai eyed Chuuya's facial features once more, dull under the pale light of the moon, though he could see the freckles once again, faint, but they were there. His makeup had come off at some point in their extensive mission. "I much prefer you without it." Dazai gestured to Chuuya's face and watched the redhead scrunch up his nose in confusion. It seemed to take a moment, but when Chuuya finally realized what he had been talking about, he immediately brought up a hand to his cheek. "Yeah?" he scoffed. "That's not what you said earlier." "I am a pathological liar. You are very aware, Chuuya." Chuuya nodded silently, eyes trained with a laser focus at one specific star in the sky, twinkling the brightest. Does Chuuya care that much about his appearance? None of it is of importance in our line of work. Chuuya rolled his eyes as if there was something that should be obvious to Dazai. "No, I don't give a shit about my looks. It's not like I can control them." "Then," Dazai prompted, and Chuuya shifted slightly, finally facing him. "I didn't notice them there until you pointed them out," he finally said. "You shouldn't have. I could have gone the rest of my damn life without seeing them." "Well..." Dazai twisted around, sitting up and resting his weight on one of his elbows as he turned to Chuuya's side. He reached out a hand and Chuuya simply watched as he brought a finger down to gently tap on Chuuya's cheek. 1. Another spot below his eye. 2. Yet another on the tip of his nose. 3. Chuuya pushed Dazai's hand away, staring at him, unimpressed. "Counting the damn freckles on my face? What are you, mocking me now?" Not in the slightest." Dazai resumed his work, tracing from one freckle to another, while Chuuya dully stared up at the sky. Dazai did not like that look on his face. 7. "Why?" he asked. "Why go the extra length to taunt me?" "Shush now," Dazai ordered, placing his finger on Chuuya's lips until he shut his mouth. "I'm not harassing you this time, Chuuya." His voice was the sincerest it was ever going to get, and Chuuya seemed to notice that too, judging by the look on his face. "I have wanted to trace the freckles on Chuuya's face." Dazai muttered under his breath. "They are akin to constellations." Chuuya snorted weakly. "Constellations on my face? I don't think that's a damn compliment." Dazai shrugged. "Take it as you wish, Chuuya. There are many meanings to constellations." Chuuya took a moment, then, "Some of which are romantic as fuck. Are you sure you want to go down that road?" Dazai shrugged again. "Perhaps." The air around them was comfortable once again, and the crisp night air, seemed to give Chuuya an excuse to finally relax and let Dazai closer. Breaths fanning against each other's faces as Dazai simply continued the pattern of tracing Chuuya's face. Is Chuuya planning to sleep out on this blanket instead of on the bed? Chuuya shrugged, and Dazai could already see the exhaustion uncoiling his partner's shoulders. Maybe I am. Well, maybe I was too. Chuuya rolled his eyes. Stay if you want, I'm not evicting you. And stay they did. Instead of the cushiony hotel bed offered to them, Dazai stayed out with Chuuya, and for one strange reason or another, the blanket on the stone balcony felt much more secure than any bed or futon Dazai had ever slept on. You're forgiven, idiot, Chuuya grumbled under his breath, half asleep. Wonderful, Dazai replied. Even long after his partner slumbered, Dazai remained tracing the same pattern. You know, actually, fun fact, I already recorded the first 2 chapters of this fic on my phone, like 2 months ago, but they were really bad, and I kind of think I improved a little bit since then, and got a mic, so I decided to re-record them. So this is the second time I've recorded this chapter, but it doesn't really matter because I really like this fic.